Welcome to this week's edition of the Pete Mezzetti Show. I'm your host, Pete Mezzetti. My guest this evening is Congressman Joe Courtney. Congressman, welcome. How are you, my friend? Good to see you.
Good to see you, Peter.
It's been a while.
It has. You know, and it's nice to be back in the studio.
I know. Last year we did this, you and I were virtual, and it wasn't as much fun.
No, and also you've, I think, got the nicest studio of any community
thank you.
Cable show in the state. So.
Thanks.
Yeah.
What's going on? What's going on?
So, you know, we're just wrapping up a 2-week stint at home,
Yep.
which has been busy. You know, been out, you know, visiting a lot of different groups, talking about the rescue plan package that passed last March.
Sure.
And how the funds are getting deployed. But also, obviously, there's a lot going on with the pending infrastructure bill and also
Yep.
the Build Back Better. But on Friday, you know, was the big excitement in Eastern Connecticut, which for the second time in the first 268 days of the Biden administration, the president came to Eastern Connecticut.
That's right.
And was up at UConn to rededicate the Dodd Center, which is now, you know, has been sort of an archival institute up there for, you know, Thomas Dodd's papers, but also other political leaders. And but now they're sort of pivoting to make it actually much more of an educational institution, very focused on human rights, which was something that, you know, Chris, when he was in the U.S. Senate on the Foreign Relations Committee, was a big focus of his work there. So, you know, President Biden flew up to help rededicate the center, and you know, obviously seeing the Marine One helicopter fly over the campus, and you know, the press corps following on the V-22 planes there. You know, I think the students actually were pretty excited, but the event itself was really. You know, I think very important at a time like this, where, as the president says, you know, we're really sort of in a inflection point where it's sort of the forces of autocracy and the forces of democracy, and having a human rights center that really is looking at, you know, issues home and abroad, you know, where you know, human rights are at risk, I think is just an incredibly important mission. You know, earlier in the day, we stopped at a daycare center in Hartford to talk about the Build Back Better package, which you know, again, is addressing, I think, a number of sort of weaknesses in our country that COVID exposed, and daycare services, I think, if you're looking at different sectors, was probably as hard hit almost as any other type of programs or, you know, nonprofit or for-profit institutions. Probably close to 200,000 daycare centers went out of business during COVID, and you know, I think people are starting to realize that, you know, daycare is not sort of just a nice thing to have. I mean, it's almost essential for particularly younger working families to be able to, you know, go to work every day. And when the president came in, the woman who runs the program, they were able to stay open. But pre-COVID, they probably had 70 slots for kids. And we're talking, you know, really infant and toddler all the way up to preschool. And today, they only have 20 going there. Wow. So, but as she was quick to point out, it's not because the demand for daycare has gone down. There's a waiting list for people. But when you look at the economics of running a daycare program, basically they're paying staff $13 an hour, which you can get more at McDonald's than you can taking care of, you know, probably, I would argue, as precious a part of our society, which is our children, particularly at a critical moment in their life. And so, you know, and they're charging an arm and a leg. I mean, you know, to send a kid to daycare now is really almost like higher education for families. So Biden's plan, the Build Back Better plan, would significantly boost through the child care block grant that flows into the states from Washington. And they would be able to boost wages. And also tied to quality standards, I mean, so that we're really talking about quality daycare, and also reduce the out-of-pocket expense for families to 7% of income, which, you know, again, if you run the numbers in terms of what that means to families, in terms of being able to find, you know, an affordable place for their kids to be safe, you know, this is in many respects one of the most important parts of the president's package. And I wish more people were watching it, because it really laid out very clearly the problem that we have right now, which is that there's just not daycare available, and that you know, if we don't do something about putting people who are dealing with early childhood education somewhat on par with other ends of the educational system, the system is just going to like completely stall out, and we can't afford that. You look at the number of job openings that exist in the economy right now, and the fact that we still have people who are not returning to the workforce. The lack of daycare is one of the biggest obstacles that families are facing. So it was a really great visit. The president, it's pretty funny. You were asking, off camera, is he a nice guy? I mean, he gets done with his presentation, and he's like, I like kids more than all of you. I'm going to go out and play with them on the playground.
Nice.
There. So he's down on his knees, and the kids were, they were very cute. They were giving him hugs, and asking, what's your name, and all this stuff. So
what's it like being president?
Yeah, right. So, but I thought it was, again, that was also a very important stop.
Yeah.
So anyway, I mean, the Congress, though, I mean, we got sworn back in January.
That's right.
I am, again, chairman of the Sea Power and Projection Forces Subcommittee, which is the Navy Oversight Panel.
Yep.
Again, I think I talked about this the last time I was on the show, but no one from Connecticut has held a position of Navy oversight since 1873. Right. So it's obviously a very busy time in terms of electric boat recapitalizing.
Absolutely.
The submarine programs, and that's continuing. Again, what we're seeing, though, is that they were having no problem with new hires pre-COVID. Right now, I check every day in terms of the job openings over there. There's 494 positions open at Electric Boat, which is that's a big number, comparatively speaking. And part of it is because the job training programs, because of COVID, had to kind of go to sleep for a while, and they're coming back up. So trying to address the skills gap is another sort of issue that, again, COVID really kind of held us back there for a while, but frankly, it's also a daycare issue. And I've talked to the CEO at Electric Boat, who, they're really, focusing on the millennial population, the Gen X and Gen Zers, who, these are people who are raising families, and so, boosting that access to childcare is important for a company like Electric Boat, just like it is for other sectors.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about the 2022 NDAA.
Yep. So every year we pass what's called the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, and that's sort of like the comprehensive bill for the Pentagon and military programs in general. So things like pay raises are included in there. That's something that the 10,000 sailors over at the sub base watch like a hawk.
Absolutely.
and also, frankly, other sort of quality of life issues in terms of Navy housing. They have a child development center right there in Groton. It's a great program, by the way. And also, obviously, the shipbuilding program is something that is included there. So, as I said, the demand signal from the Navy for the Virginia-class submarines that are built there, as well as the new Columbia-class, which is the bigger subs, is very strong, and that work is going to continue. If anyone drives up to Groton and goes right on the main drag there at past EB, you can see the new building that's going up there. It's an $800 million structure that they're going to be doing the Columbia final modular construction. It's really it's the biggest building under construction in Connecticut, hands down. There's no question about it. But what's interesting is obviously there was a big announcement on September 15th when the U.S., Australia, and the United Kingdom agreed to a new technology sharing arrangement for naval nuclear propulsion. Sure. Again, Australia has a submarine force. It's small. I've been there and seen their subs. They're the old diesel electrics, which go back to World War II days. Right. And this is now going to allow the U.S. to help them with their new submarine fleet, because they're going to go from diesel electric to nuclear propulsion. And we come from the part of the world that is invented that. So Australia is a great ally, and all three countries, I think, are very excited about this new agreement.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, what about what happened with the stimulus package?
So again, the rescue plan, which passed last March, the president signed it into law, Again, the stimulus checks, flowed from that, but there's obviously been other funding that is out there to, again, try and help out with sort of critical COVID-impacted services. Towns and cities and school districts all received a very healthy amount of money to help them deal with expenses that are sort of related to COVID. So the school districts in particular, who now are in person, but they had to make accommodations to make the schools safe, and a lot of the school districts, we've been in touch with, the school superintendents have been deploying that money, and dealing with issues about learning loss that occurred during COVID, because a lot of the kids who had to connect by virtual, it frankly didn't work very well, and kids, backslid. So, hiring, extra teaching staff, particularly for special education kids, this money is critical in terms of trying to get people sort of back on track in terms of their, their learning proficiency. The towns are also kind of grappling, trying to figure out what's the best use of that money. I mean, the good news is they have until 2024 to spend that money. I'm sitting here in the studio with Julia McGrath, who's a staffer who's been helping the towns understand the rules from the U.S. Treasury Department. And so, for example, in New London, they're using it to fill 3 police positions because, again, the emergency responders had a lot of overtime and stress on their work during COVID. Same with other public safety programs that are out there. They're also trying to upgrade some of the heating and ventilating systems in some of the town halls, senior centers, places like that, because we're talking about an airborne pathogen, which COVID was. And also a lot of recreational programs trying to, promote healthy outdoor activity, which, again, I think is kind of this new normal that we're dealing with here. So it's really been kind of fun, working with the towns in terms of just the different ideas that they've brought to the table. And again, our office gets a lot of calls, and Julia helps to try and walk them through, the latest Treasury rules. Anyone who's listening, who has interest, certainly we welcome those calls as well. But if you really read the local press, you can see the way some of these towns now are starting to roll out the different ideas for this rescue plan money that came through. Rental assistance also was another big part of the rescue plan. With the CDC no eviction rule that took place throughout COVID, which was a safety decision, still kind of begged the question was, well, who pays the bills for the landlords? Because they still got to, pay the light bill and a mortgage or whatever. So the rental assistance program, which started in March, actually, in Connecticut, was pretty clunky when it first came out, but it's definitely picking up speed. And it's about getting money into, frankly, it's getting money into landlords' pockets. It's not money that tenants can keep. This is money that's to help, again, keep everybody whole and hopefully reduce the number of evictions as the full economy reopens.
There we go. Congressman, would you mind sticking around for another segment?
Sure.
All right, we'll be right back.
Fellow Americans.
Right now, the COVID-19 vaccines are available to millions of Americans.
And soon, they will be available to everyone.
The science is clear. These vaccines will protect you and those you love from this dangerous and deadly disease.
They could save your life.
So we urge you to get vaccinated when it's available to you.
That's the first step to ending the pandemic and moving our country forward. It's up to you.
Community TV, your neighborhood TV.
Publicly funded and a reliable partner for cable companies nationwide, it provides transparent coverage of local and state government, education, and public programming.
A digital town green that can be watched anywhere, anytime, and on any device.
Watch us on today's high-tech distribution methods.
Community TV in Connecticut.
Local,
unfiltered,
reliable, and yours.
Welcome back to this week's edition of the Pete Mezzetti Show. I'm Pete Mezzetti, sitting here with Congressman Joe Courtney. Congressman, welcome back.
Good to be here.
Good, thanks for sticking around, my friend.
Yeah.
So, Congressman, before the break, we were talking about the towns who were able to get money.
Right.
So I was wondering, maybe we can open this segment talking about some of the local towns and how much money they actually received?
Sure. So, again, we've got the full layout
Right.
of the town-by-town numbers for the 63 towns that are in Eastern Connecticut's 2nd District.
Right.
So, again, just to pick a couple in your viewership area here,
Sure.
Clinton, where you hail from,
Yep.
right? So they received $3.8 million, which, again, is going to be sent out in 2 checks.
Okay.
The first check has already been submitted, and that's half of it. So 3.8 is I'll let you do the math.
All right.
And then the second, so that's 3.8. So if you look at Old Saybrook, it's 2.9.
Okay.
Westbrook, it's 2 million. Again, some of the larger communities who, again, qualify for under the formula because of the poverty level in the community there, it's actually quite sizable. So New London is getting $26 million. Ooh. Yeah, and so, but now the towns also, as I mentioned on the earlier segment, get education.
Yep.
Funding through it. So Clinton is going to receive $1.7 million for its school budget. Old Saybrook is $887,000, and Westbrook is $698,000.
Oh,
and
wow.
again, that's based on what's called the Title I formula, which is Title I is part of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act that Congress created back in the 1960s, and it's tied to sort of the student family income level, and the lower the income, the larger the town's eligibility. So again, this is what they can use to help, again, have the schools reopen safely.
Now let's talk about the Public Service Protection Program.
Yep. So the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program,
Yes.
which is way back when I was on your show the first time,
Right.
In 2006, when I won by 83 votes. One of the big.
That long ago? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
One of the big issues that we were talking about, and it still persists today, is obviously college affordability,
Right.
and the unbelievable amount of debt financing that students and families have to use to pay for college.
Right.
So we passed in 2007 the College Cost Reduction Act, and one of the components of it was, as your question asked, was on the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program.
Sure.
And what that did is it basically said that if an individual has student loan debt and goes to work for 10 years in a public service occupation, healthcare, teaching, public safety, working for a nonprofit, like a community television,
There you go.
and is current with their student loan payments after 10 years, whatever is the balance at that 10-year period will be completely discharged.
Really?
So it's a way of rewarding people who maybe are taking jobs that are somewhat, lower income than they might get in the private sector.
Sure.
Because obviously you want to give people an incentive to do this important work for our country. So 10 years went by.
Right.
2017, the first people lined up and said, "Hey, I want my discharge."
Yeah,
And unfortunately, the prior administration, the Secretary of Education, you may recall, is a woman by the name of Betsy DeVos, threw every Mickey Mouse roadblock in front of people in terms of getting discharged. So, for example, if you were in the military
Right.
and had an old student loan that you took out before you joined up,
Right.
and if you were in 10 years in the military and your loan was current, any time that you were deployed overseas, because there's an automatic suspension of loan payments, they would not count those months overseas as qualifying payments. Even though, again, the law was set up so that as long as you were current with your loan, which somebody who was doing overseas deployments would be still current.
Right.
So, so anyway, the phones were ringing off the hook in our office. People who just couldn't believe it. That
Right.
and again, they were saying, well, there was another sort of roadblock that DeVos threw up, which said that if you used what's called an income-based repayment, formula for what your monthly payment was, those payments would not count towards the 10-year limit. And a lot of people had to use the income-based repayment. Again, you're not defaulting on the loan, you're just getting like a modified monthly payment when you use that. So anyway, student loan forgiveness was a big issue in the campaign in 2020, and President Biden, when he ran, said he definitely was going to focus on fixing this problem. I mean, really, it was almost like 1% of eligible individuals were given discharge under the DeVos years, and I mean, the numbers are, and we got some of those calls in our office. So just about a week or so ago, the new Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona, who hails from Meriden, Connecticut,
that's right,
issued a new rule that basically just sort of swept away all of these Mickey Mouse obstacles, and basically said that if you're current, and with your loan after 10 years, and still have a qualifying job, whether it's a nonprofit or cop or teacher or whatever, that they are going to basically restart the application process to get people's loans discharged. Same thing for the military. If somebody was deployed on a submarine out of Groton, and they go off for 90 to 120 day deployments there, that time period will be counted towards the 10-year trigger, to get your loan discharged. I think it's great. First of all, it means that the government's keeping its promise.
Absolutely.
And number two, there's there's obviously a big debate about whether, Biden should just do across the board $50,000, loan forgiveness. And there's a group that is pushing hard for that. He, as a candidate, Biden never supported that position. He said that he thought if Congress wanted to do it at a lower level, like 10,000, that he would support that. But frankly, the chances of Congress doing that, as someone who sits on the Education Committee, are slim and none. So, so for him to just go ahead and at least fix this existing program, public service loan forgiveness, which I will tell you, I mean, there might be some people who would object to people getting that help who are in teaching or public safety or nonprofit work, but I think the vast majority of the country agrees that that's fair. To reward people for taking on those jobs. By the way, if people have questions who are listening in, you can call us in the Norwich office. Again, there's going to have to be like another sort of application for people to submit who think they may be eligible. For the military cohort, that's actually going to be done almost automatically between the Department of Ed and the Department of Defense in terms of just sort of calculating those months in terms of qualifying payments.
And last time you and I were together, we were in the middle of, it was right before the election. What a difference an administration makes. Yeah,
I mean, it's, again, when we had Secretary Cardona come over for his first hearing, and I mean, it was just awesome to have somebody who,
nice.
Oh, he's great.
Is he?
I mean, a real, I think just impressive story. He's a Puerto Rican nationality or heritage, and grew up in public housing in Meriden. English is a second language learner, but just completely all-star student. Went to tech school for high school. And then went to Central Connecticut State University. So, sort of public education, all the way. Graduated, got his teaching certificate, went right into a 4th grade classroom. I mean, this guy, it's in his blood. And his parent, it's either his father or his uncle is a police officer. Again, very down to earth guy. And, he really looks you in the eye and answers your question. He's not, somebody who's there to, if you don't agree, he'll tell you, and that's it. And it's not nasty or anything like that. So anyway, so that's great. And, at the Department of Defense, the new Secretary of the Navy, who came up to Connecticut for the USS Vermont christening, which was about a month or so ago, Another, Cuban refugee, very low income, grew up in Hell's Kitchen, New York, went to the Naval Academy, 22 years as a surface warfare officer, started a small business, and now he's Secretary of the Navy. And I mean, he's just, if there was a way we could ever connect, he's just the most friendly, smart, down-to-earth guy, and it's a pleasure dealing with people like that. And really, he does not have a political bone in his body. He wants to engage with Republican members, on my subcommittee as well as the full Armed Services Committee. So that's that's what we need.
Really quickly, we got about 30 seconds left. What committees are you on?
So again, it's Armed Services, Chair of Sea Power, Education and Labor, and on the Higher Ed and Workforce Development Subcommittee, which that's what Connecticut needs.
Absolutely.
We need to get people skilled up and ready to take on work that the country needs.
Absolutely. Well, Congressman Courtney, we're about to run out of time, but I want to thank you for coming down.
That's always a pleasure.
Hopefully we'll see you again soon, my friend.
Okay, Peter.
You got it. Thanks,
back.
Joe. Thanks, buddy. On behalf of Congressman Joe Courtney, I'm Pete Mezzetti. Thanks, good night, and we'll see you next time.